The good physician treats the disease, the great physician treats the patient who has the disease. The value of experience is not in seeing much, but in seeing wisely. He who studies medicine without books sails an uncharted sea, but he who studies medicine without patience does not go to sea at all. The best preparation for tomorrow is to do today's work superbly well. To have striven, to have made the effort, to have been true to certain ideals, this alone is worth the struggle. The young physician starts life with 20 drugs for each disease, and the old physician ends life with 1 drug for 20 diseases. The very first step toward success in any occupation is to become interested in it. Variability is the law of life, and as no two faces are the same, so no two bodies are alike, and no two individuals react alike and behave alike under the abnormal conditions which we know as disease. No bubble is so iridescent or floats longer than that blown by the successful teacher. We are here to add what we can to life, not to get what we can from life. Observe, record, tabulate, communicate. Use your 5 senses. Learn to see, learn to hear, learn to feel, learn to smell, and know that by practice alone you can become expert. It is much more important to know what sort of a patient has a disease than what sort of a disease a patient has. Medicine is a science of uncertainty and an art of probability. The first duties of the physician is to educate the masses not to take medicine. There is no disease more conducive to clinical humility than aneurysm of the aorta. Soap and water and common sense are the best disinfectants. In seeking absolute truth we aim at the unattainable and must be content with broken portions. No human being is constituted to know the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and even the best of men must be content with fragments, with partial glimpses, never the full fruition. There are, in truth, no specialties in medicine, since to know fully many of the most important diseases a man must be familiar with their manifestations in many organs. The greater the ignorance, the greater the dogmatism. It is much simpler to buy books than to read them and easier to read them than to absorb their contents. Look wise, say nothing, and grunt. Speech was given to conceal thought. The teacher's life should have 3 periods: study until 25, investigation until 40, profession until 60, at which age I would have him retired on a double allowance. One of the first duties of the physician is to educate the masses not to take medicine. What is the student but a lover courting a fickle mistress who ever eludes his grasp? There is no more difficult art to acquire than the art of observation, and for some men it is quite as difficult to record an observation in brief and plain language. To study the phenomena of disease without books is to sail an uncharted sea, while to study books without patience is not to go to sea at all. The philosophies of one age have become the absurdities of the next, and the foolishness of yesterday has become the wisdom of tomorrow. The desire to take medicine is perhaps the greatest feature which distinguishes man from animals. The natural man has only two primal passions, to get and to beget. One finger in the throat and one in the rectum makes a good diagnostician. There are no straight backs, no symmetrical faces, many wry noses, and no even legs. We are a crooked and perverse generation. To know what has to be done, then do it, comprises the whole philosophy of practical life. When schemes are laid in advance, it is surprising how often the circumstances fit in with them. To die daily, after the manner of St. Paul, ensures the resurrection of a new man, who makes each day the epitome of life. To it, more than to anything else, I owe whatever success I have had, to this power of settling down to the day's work and trying to do it to the best of one's ability, and letting the future take care of itself. The search for static security, in the law and elsewhere, is misguided. The fact is security can only be achieved through constant change, adapting old ideas that have outlived their usefulness to current facts. Avoid wine and women, choose a freckly-faced girl for a wife, they are invariably more amiable. In science the credit goes to the man who convinces the world, not to the man to whom the idea first occurs. The natural man has only two primal passions, to get and beget. A physician who treats himself has a fool for a patient. The higher education so much needed today is not given in the school, is not to be bought in the marketplace, but it has to be wrought out in each one of us for himself. It is the silent influence of character on character. The extraordinary development of modern science may be her undoing. Specialism, now a necessity, has fragmented the specialties themselves in a way that makes the outlook hazardous. The workers lose all sense of proportion in a maze of minutiae. Save the fleeting minute, learn gracefully to dodge the bore. Fed on the dry husks of facts, the human heart has a hidden want which science cannot supply. Without egotism and full of feeling, laughter is the music of life. Half of us are blind, few of us feel, and we are all deaf. Shed, as you do your garments, your daily sins, whether of omission or commission, and you will wake a free man, with a new life. Live neither in the past nor in the future, but let each day absorb all your interest, energy and enthusiasm. The best preparation for tomorrow is to live today superbly well. It is not as if our homeopathic brothers are asleep, far from it, they are awake, many of them at any rate, to the importance of the scientific study of disease. The future belongs to science. More and more she will control the destinies of the nations. Already she has them in her crucible and on her balances. No man is really happy or safe without a hobby. As it can be maintained that all the great advances have come from men under 40, so the history of the world shows that a very large proportion of the evils may be traced to the sexagenarians, nearly all the great mistakes politically and socially, all of the worst poems, most of the bad pictures, a majority of the bad novels and not a few of the bad sermons and speeches. The higher the standard of education in a profession, the less marked will be the charlatanism. Engrossed late and soon in professional cares, getting and spending, you may so lay waste your powers that you may find, too late, with hearts given away, that here is no place in your habit-stricken souls for those gentler influences which make your life worth living. When schemes are laid in advance, it is surprising how often the circumstances will fit in with them. One special advantage of the skeptical attitude of mind is that a man is never vexed to find that after all he has been in the wrong. No dreams, no visions, no delicious fantasies, no castles in the air, with which, as the old song so truly says, hearts are broken, heads are turned. Laughter is the music of life. Avoid wine and women, choose a freckly-faced girl for a wife, they are invariably more amiable. In the mortality bills, pneumonia is an easy second to tuberculosis. Indeed, in many cities the death rate is now higher and it has become, to use the phrase of Bunyan, the captain of the men of death. Faith is a most precious commodity, without which we should be very badly off. Let each hour of the day have its allotted duty, and cultivate that power of concentration which grows with its exercise. To do today's work well and not to bother about tomorrow is the secret of accomplishment. Even in populous districts, the practice of medicine is a lonely road which winds uphill all the way, and a man may easily go astray and never reach the delectable mountains, unless he early finds those shepherd guides of whom Bunyan tells, knowledge, experience, watchful, and sincere. Too many men slip early out of the habit of studious reading, and yet that is essential. A library represents the mind of its collector, his fancies and foibles, his strength and weakness, his prejudices and preferences. Particularly is this the case if, to the character of a collector, he adds, or tries to add, the qualities of a student who wishes to know the books and the lives of the men who wrote them. The friendships of his life, the phases of his growth, the vagaries of his mind, all are represented. The clean tongue, the clear head, and the bright eye are birthrights of each day. Breathes there a man with soul so dead that it does not glow at the thought of what the men of his blood have done and suffered to make his country what it is? There is room, plenty of room, for proper pride of land and birth. What I inveigh against is a cursed spirit of intolerance, conceived in distrust and bred in ignorance, that makes the mental attitude perennially antagonistic, even bitterly antagonistic, to everything foreign, that subordinates everywhere the race to the nation, forgetting the higher claims of human brotherhood. Nature, the great Moloch, which exacts a frightful tax of human blood, sparing neither young nor old, taking the child from the cradle, the mother from her babe, and the father from the family. That man can interrogate as well as observe nature was a lesson slowly learned in his evolution. The most essential thing for happiness is the gift of friendship. Beware of people who call you Doc, they rarely pay their bills. The only way to treat the common cold is with contempt. Start at once a bedside library and spend the last half hour of the day in communion with the saints of humanity. Happiness lies in the absorption in some vocation which satisfies the soul. A library represents the mind of its collector, fancies and foibles, strengths and weaknesses, prejudices and preferences. Think not of the amount to be accomplished, the difficulties to be overcome, or the end to be attained, but set earnestly at the little task at your elbow, letting that be sufficient for the day. It is strange how the memory of a man may float to posterity on what he would have himself regarded as the most trifling of his works. Conservatism and old fogyism are totally different things. The motto of one is prove all things and hold fast that which is good, and of the other prove nothing but hold fast that which is old. Nothing is life is more wonderful than faith. The true poetry of life, the poetry of the commonplace, of the ordinary man, of the plain, toil-worn woman, with their loves and their joys, their sorrows and their griefs. Personally, I do not see in Canada it would be a feasible thing if any ministry organized taking over both the health and the disease of the entire community. Even in the most favorable circumstances, there would be that absence of competition and that sense of independence. I do not believe it would be good for the profession or good for the public. Now of the difficulties bound up with the public in which we doctors work, I hesitate to speak in a mixed audience. Common sense in matters medical is rare, and is usually an inverse ratio to the degree of education. Take the sum of human achievement in action, in science, in art, in literature, subtract the work of the men above 40, and while we should miss great treasures, even priceless treasures, we would practically be where we are today. The effective, moving, vitalizing work of the world is done between the ages of 25 and 40. A man is sane morally at 30, rich mentally at 40, wise spiritually at 50 or never. The Scots are the backbone of Canada. They are all right in their three vital parts, head, heart and haggis. What is patience but an equanimity which enables you to rise superior to the trials of life? Perhaps no sin so easily besets us as a sense of self-satisfied superiority to others. For the general practitioner, a well-used library is one of the few correctives of the premature senility which is so apt to take him. Throw away all ambition beyond that of doing the day's work well. The travelers on the road to success live in the present, heedless of taking thought for the morrow. Live neither in the past nor in the future, but let each day's work absorb your entire energies, and satisfy your wildest ambition. To it, more than to anything else, I owe whatever success I have had, to this power of settling down to the day's work and trying to do it to the best of one's ability, and letting the future take care of itself. At the outset, do not be worried about this big question truth. It is a very simple matter if each one of you starts with the desire to get as much as possible. No human being is constituted to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and even the best of men must be content with fragments, with partial glimpses, never the full fruition. In this unsatisfied quest, the attitude of mind, the desire, the Thursday thirst that from the soul must arise, the fervent longing, are the be-all and the end-all. The great minds, the great works transcend all limitations of time, of language, and of race. And the scholar can never feel initiated into the company of the elect until he can approach all of life's problems from the cosmopolitan standpoint. There is no more potent antidote to the corroding influence of mammon than the presence in the community of a body of men devoted to science, living for investigation and caring nothing for the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. The uselessness of men above 60 years of age and the incalculable benefit it would be in commercial, in political, and in professional life, if as a matter of course, men stopped work at this age. It is not the delicate neurotic person who is prone to angina, but the robust, the vigorous in mind and body, the keen and ambitious man, the indicator of whose engines is always at full speed ahead. He who knows syphilis knows medicine. Work is the open sesame of every portal, the great equalizer in the world, the true philosopher's stone which transmutes all the base metal of humanity into gold. There is a form of laughter that springs from the heart, heard every day in the merry voice of childhood. The expression of a laughter, loving spirit that defies analysis by the philosopher, which has nothing rigid or mechanical in it, and totally without social significance. Bubbling spontaneously from the heart of child or man. Without egotism and full of feeling, laughter is the music of life. A well-trained, sensible doctor is one of the most valuable assets of a community. Live neither in the past nor in the future, but let each day's work absorb your entire energies, and satisfy your widest ambition. Shut out all of your past except that which will help you weather your tomorrows. We are constantly misled by the ease with which our minds fall into the ruts of one or two experiences. To know just what has to be done, then to do it, comprises the whole philosophy of practical life. Taking a lady's hand gives her confidence in her physician. The very first step toward success in any occupation is to become interested in it. Locke put this in a very happy way when he said, "Give a pupil a relish of knowledge and you put life into his work." The librarian of today, and it will be true still more of the librarians of tomorrow, are not fiery dragons interposed between the people and the books. They are useful public servants, who manage libraries in the interest of the public. Many still think that a great reader, or a writer of books, will make an excellent librarian. This is pure fallacy. To confess ignorance is often wiser than to beat about the bush with a hypothetical diagnosis. It is not that some people do not know what to do with truth when it is offered to them, but the tragic fate is to reach, after patient search, a condition of mind blindness, in which the truth is not recognized, though it stares you in the face. The great majority gave no signs one way or the other. Like birth, their death was a sleep and a forgetting. Humanity has but three great enemies: fever, famine, and war. Of these by far the greatest, by far the most terrible, is fever. Courage and cheerfulness will not only carry you over the rough places in life, but will enable you to bring comfort and help to the weak-hearted and will console you in the sad hours. Few diseases present greater difficulties in the way of diagnosis than malignant endocarditis, difficulties which in many cases are practically insurmountable. It is no disparagement to the many skilled physicians who have put their cases upon record to say that, in fully one-half the diagnosis was made post-mortem. The successful teacher is no longer on a height, pumping knowledge at high pressure into passive receptacles. Jaundice is the disease that your friends diagnose. But whatever you do, take neither yourselves nor your fellow creatures too seriously. There is tragedy enough in our daily routine, but there is room too for a keen sense of the absurdities and incongruities of life. And in the shifting panorama no one sees better than the doctor the perennial sameness of men's ways. There are three classes of human beings: men, women, and women physicians. We doctors have always been a simple trusting folk. Did we not believe Galen implicitly for 1,500 years and Hippocrates for more than 2,000? I desire no other epitaph, no hurry about it, I may say, than the statement that I taught medical students in the wards, as I regard this as by far the most useful and important work I have been called upon to do. Varicose veins are the result of an improper selection of grandparents. Advice is sought to confirm a position already taken. It cannot be too often or too forcibly brought home to us that the hope of the profession is with the men who do its daily work in general practice. Medicine is learned by the bedside and not in the classroom. Let not your conceptions of disease come from words heard in the lecture room or read from the book. See, and then reason and compare and control. But see first. We are all dietetic sinners, only a small percent of what we eat nourishes us. The balance goes to waste and loss of energy. To have a group of cloistered clinicians away completely from the broad current of professional life would be bad for teacher and worse for student. The primary work of a professor of medicine in a medical school is in the wards, teaching his pupils how to deal with patients and their diseases. Now the way of life that I preach is a habit to be acquired gradually by long and steady repetition. It is the practice of living for the day only, and for the day's work. By far the most dangerous foe we have to fight is apathy, indifference from whatever cause, not from a lack of knowledge, but from carelessness. From absorption in other pursuits, from a contempt bred of self-satisfaction. If it were not for the great variability among individuals, medicine might as well be a science, not an art. Things cannot always go your way. Learn to accept in silence the minor aggravations. Cultivate the gift of taciturnity and consume your own smoke with an extra draught of hard work, so that those about you may not be annoyed with the dust and soot of your complaints. Nothing will sustain you more potently than the power to recognize in your humdrum routine, as perhaps it may be thought, the true poetry of life. Without faith a man can do nothing, with it all things are possible. Patients should have rest, food, fresh air, and exercise, the quadrangle of health. Patients rarely die of the disease from which they suffer. Secondary or terminal infections are the real cause of death. There are only two sorts of doctors, those who practice with their brains, and those who practice with their tongues. Every patient you see is a lesson in much more than the malady from which he suffers. Care more for the individual patient than for the special features of the disease. Put yourself in his place. The kindly word, the cheerful greeting, the sympathetic look, these the patient understands. Acquire the art of detachment, the virtue of method, and the quality of thoroughness, but above all the grace of humility. The young doctor should look about early for an avocation, a pastime, that will take him away from patients, pills, and potions. The practice of medicine will be very much as you make it, to one a worry, a care, a perpetual annoyance, to another, a daily job and a life of as much happiness and usefulness as can well fall to the lot of man, because it is a life of self-sacrifice and of countless opportunities to comfort and help the weak-hearted, and to raise up those that fall. Gentlemen, I have a confession to make. Half of what we have taught you is in error, and furthermore we cannot tell you which half it is. The trained nurse has become one of the great blessings of humanity, taking a place beside the physician and the priest. The person who takes medicine must recover twice, once from the disease and once from the medicine. Be calm and strong and patient. Meet failure and disappointment with courage. Rise superior to the trials of life, and never give in to hopelessness or despair. In danger, in adversity, cling to your principles and ideals. Equanimitas. The hardest conviction to get into the mind of a beginner is that the education upon which he is engaged is not a college course, not a medical course, but a life course, for which the work of a few years under teachers is but a preparation. The practice of medicine is an art, not a trade, a calling, not a business. A calling in which your heart will be exercised equally with your head. Often the best part of your work will have nothing to do with potions and powders, but with the exercise of an influence of the strong upon the weak, of the righteous upon the wicked, of the wise upon the foolish. Listen to your patient, he is telling you the diagnosis.